Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Township of Wainfleet Special Council meeting of March 9th, 2021. And please stand for the national anthem. Okay, I'd like to begin our meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. And I look to councillors, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I may have one in regards to the short-term rental. If we get into discussion on that, I will excuse myself. And that's at probably more towards the end of the meeting. Okay, we go to the mayor's remarks. Please note that the proceedings are being broadcast live, recorded, and made available through the township website and youtube.com. The NPCA is doing a survey regarding the Wainfleet wetlands and quarry conservation area. That survey can be found on our website, and it's available to be done until March 22nd. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey if you haven't done so already. Council ratified the 2021 budget last evening, approving an overall increase of 3.5% to the municipal levy. This will result in an increase of $157 per year to the average property based on assessment. I'm excited to announce that the township will soon be a drop-off and pick-up location for private water testing samples. We'll share more details as soon as they're confirmed. The staff have been working on that for the past month or so in conjunction with the public health in the region, and we are now almost in a position to start doing that. It should be within the next couple weeks. Normally at this time of year, I would participate in the Mayors for Meals program, delivering meals on wheels to our residents. But due to COVID-19 restrictions, we will instead fly the Meals on Wheels flag later this month. The Police Services Board will meet electronically on Thursday, March 25th at 8:30. Niagara Region Council will meet electronically later that evening at 6:30. And our next regular meeting of Council will be held Tuesday, March 30th at 7 p.m. And that concludes the Mayor's remarks. Are there any Councillor remarks? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just to announce the next NPCA full authority meeting will be virtually Friday on March 19th at 9:30. So that's a small change to the day of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other council members wishing to make a comment, we'll move on to the adoption of our previous council minutes. Now there are 4 sets of minutes here, and the motion being that the minutes of the council meetings held February 16th, March 1st, March 3rd, and March 8th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Can I have a move and a seconder to put those on the floor? Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Omissions, errors? Okay, seeing none. Recorded vote in favor or opposed to receiving those minutes. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Van Vliet,
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore,
Favor.
Councillor Cridland,
In favor.
and I'm in favor. That is carried. We have no public meeting this evening, but we do have a couple delegations. So the first delegation is Eric Axe, Project Manager, Planning Programs and Engagement for Niagara Region, Agricultural System Mapping for the Region of Niagara Municipal Comprehensive Review. He has submitted the delegation respecting this system mapping. Mr. Axe, are you online?
Good evening. Yes, I am.
Okay, so we keep this to 10 minutes, and at 9 minutes, I will say 1 minute left, and then I'll appreciate if you could wrap it up. So you have 10 minutes, sir, and you may begin.
Certainly. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Eric Gotch. I'm a planner with the Niagara Region's Community and Long Range Planning Division. I'm in front of you this evening to offer some commentary and assist with answering any questions Council may have on Agenda Item 10A1. That's Ms. Irvin's memo related to the Province of Ontario's agricultural system. To provide some background, when the Province of Ontario released the Growth Plan in 2017, it included policies that spoke to the identification of a provincial agricultural system, including identification of a refined agricultural land base. In 2018, the Province of Ontario released refined agricultural land base mapping, which included the identification of additional prime agricultural areas, as well as candidate areas for consideration, both in Wainfleet and across all of Niagara. Prime agricultural areas represent large, generally contiguous blocks of land that enable current and future opportunities for agriculture. Wainfleet generally reflects these in their official plan and zoning as areas designated for agriculture. At the regional level, we refer to these lands as good general agriculture. The candidate areas identified by the Province of Ontario are currently designated rural at the regional level, but exhibit characteristics the province looks for in prime agricultural areas. These candidate lands have been referred to the region for consideration, relying on local characteristics to guide decision making. Ultimately, the Province of Ontario wants our input as to whether or not the candidate areas should be converted to prime agricultural areas. However, the final determination of the candidate land designation lies with the Province of Ontario. Over the last 18 months, regional planning staff have been working through a refinement exercise that considers the candidate areas. This is being undertaken to support the development of the new regional official plan. Regional staff conducted site visits and met with Wainfleet planning staff to discuss an approach to responding to the candidate lands that have been identified by the Province of Ontario. Ms. Irvin's report provides an overview of that process, as well as the draft refined mapping. I'll pause my commentary at this point, and I'm happy to either answer questions now, or we can allow the agenda to proceed to, I think, section 10, where Ms. Irvin's memo is, at which point, if Council wishes, I can provide answers or additional information after Ms. Irvin's has introduced her memo.
Okay, so what we'll do in respect here is if you're finished with your presentation, we'll receive that presentation and we won't have any motions from that. Then we'll ask our planner to come in and do her presentation and we'll work from there. So are you finished with your presentation?
I am. Thank you very much. Yep.
Okay, and so I'll look for a mover and a seconder just to receive that presentation. Councillor Gilmore and Councillor Cridland, I think your hand was up there. Thank you. And is there any questions of our guest this evening at this time? Okay, seeing none to yes, it's going to be like all together is how we thought it would work best. Okay, so let's receive this report then. Opposed or in favor? Councillor McClellan, Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor?
And Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Okay, thank you. So that report is received. So now we go to our planner, Sarah Ivans, and ask her to speak to this, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Would I be able to share my screen, Amber, if you can give me permissions, and I'll pull up the mapping that's in my memo.
You're sharing now, Sarah. I just need to unmute your microphone and we're good to go.
Okay. Thank you. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to all council, this first map that I have up on screen here is the agricultural land base provided by the province. So the areas highlighted in green are considered prime agricultural areas. And the areas highlighted in red are the candidate areas that Eric discussed in his presentation. So these red areas are the ones that the region is looking at in terms of making a decision as to whether or not those should be prime agricultural lands or continue to be rural lands. This next map here shows the totality of prime agricultural lands for Wainfleet, and this is based on the refinements made for those candidate areas and incorporates the prime agricultural land mapping provided by the province. I think what council will get most benefit out of is this third map here, which kind of combines all of that information. So this area here that is kind of a beige brown color, this is considered the prime agricultural area. What this map also shows is the green lines that identify the limits of the prime agricultural mapping that was originally provided by the province. So you can see that on a couple of instances throughout the map that the proposed prime agricultural mapping for the regional official plan extends beyond this line. I think one of the areas to note is the Wainfleet bog has been included within that prime agricultural area. And then we've also made some adjustments along the lakeshore area. So you can see south of these green lines, there have been additional lands that have been included in the prime agricultural area. Now, these decisions were largely made on the township's current official plan mapping, as these properties are mapped as agricultural area under the township's official plan. In terms of the candidate areas, they're outlined in red, and you can see the decisions made with respect to those. So I'll start in the northeast corner. So this section here that doesn't have any coloring within those red lines, that will remain as rural lands, and the township's current official plan designates these as rural. This second candidate area over here, as you can see, will be switched to prime agricultural. And I'll note that above the railway line here, so the north end of the railway, the township's current official plan has this area mapped as agricultural area. And then in this area, we have currently mapped as rural area. So it's south of this rail line here that we have mapped as rural, and what's being proposed is prime agricultural land for this candidate area. As we move south towards Highway 3, again, the red outline is the candidate areas provided by the province, and there are some instances where the decision has been made to move them to prime agricultural areas. So again, it's only the areas or the properties that are shaded in this kind of beige color. So everything that isn't shaded and is just showing the aerial imagery will remain as rural area. I guess just to summarize, and I think I've said this a couple of times now, the refinements made by the region largely reflect what the township has in our official plan. So my next map here that I'll throw up, this is the land use schedule for our official plan. And it's a little bit hard to see because our agricultural area is a very light beige color. but the majority of the township is in that agricultural area designation. And you'll see south of Highway 3, we have a little bit of rural area around Burnaby, and then over again around the quarry area. And then our other rural area is up between Forks Road and Lambert Road. I think that's it for my presentation on my memo, but certainly I can either leave the mapping up or exit full screen for any questions and discussion on this.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ivins. So the report from our guest is received, so we'll go right to questions. And is there anybody who would like to begin comment, question on this? Councillor McClellan. Microphone, Mike.
Sorry about that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Eric. There's 3 guests that are waiting in the room to talk to you that I am sure will fight tooth and nail that we can't farm the Wainfleet bog, and they're scientists, so you can look at that. But the other areas, I mean, I look at the area to the northeast that's all in red, that's going gold. I happen to know the guy that farms there. My God, he gets stuck and breaks more axles on farm equipment. It's a swamp. I don't know why you're calling that area. And then the areas down along the lakeshore. I mean, we've been part of the region for 50 years. We asked the region to give us a little bit of industrial land or commercial land. They haven't. They haven't done anything for us. And then they come back and they want to take more of what we have for rural land and take it into farmland. You guys aren't helping us at all. Like, do you not listen? Does one department not talk to the next? But your planning department, we tried to zone one piece of land commercial so we could get a business in here, and they shot it down. Oh, we'll take care of you on the official plan. Now you send us this, and there's nothing on it. Like, ask them to wake up and give their heads a shake.
Okay, comments. Thank you. Other comments? So, okay, Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Eric. When you said you conducted site visits, did you visit every site that's in red in Wainfleet?
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, we did. We've driven past as many of those that we have road access or road frontage to as possible. We've also been to the additional sites that were captured, reflected in the zoning.
Okay, carry on.
Thank you. And further to Councillor McClellan's question, what exactly is the rationale for declaring the Wainfleet Bog prime agricultural?
Through the mayor to the councillor, the Wainfleet Bog is currently mapped prime agricultural, as I understand it, and the refined system put forward by the province contemplated removal of that designation on the Wainfleet Bog. We have identified it to be placed back in an effort to make the sort of larger picture of justifications for land consideration in Wainfleet make sense. And just to put some numbers to that, the province of Ontario, and I should be clear because there was some earlier comments, this is not the region that has placed these designations or identified these candidate lands. This is being done by the province of Ontario. Through the growth plan, identified 995 additional hectares of land for prime agriculture in Wainfleet. On top of that, they identified 983 hectares of land for candidate. Through working with Ms. Ivins and through conducting site visits and looking around, we've determined that approximately 600 hectares of those candidate lands are not suitable for conversion to prime agriculture. we now have to go through an exercise to justify each of those candidate areas that we are not recommending for conversion to prime agriculture to the province. We're doing this in Wainfleet, we're doing it in Port Colborne, we've done it in Fort Erie. It's a bit of a process, but it is the way that the province has asked for us to participate and communicate on this. So I guess back to the initial, question, we've been to these areas, we're trying to make the numbers make sense. And so having the Wainfleet bog sort of helps build a case for a large, robust agricultural system. It doesn't necessarily have to be farmable or have production crops on it to contribute to an agricultural system. So there's a number of considerations that have gone into this, but at the end of the day, we're trying to strike a balance and put forward the best case we can to, identify lands that have production agriculture occurring that are aligned with Wainfleet's official plan and zoning, and then keeping the lands that don't have potential or don't meet the criteria, keeping them out and keeping them rural. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Oh, Councillor Crinland's had her hand up.
Oh, I'm
before,
sorry.
so-
Go ahead, Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you. So again, this is a lot, to absorb in terms of the maps and where we want to land. So what I think I've just heard is the region is actually trying to enlarge the rural footprint from what the province is initially wanting to designate as prime agriculture. So for tonight's work, is there something that we would be approving, or is it more like an endorsement, or maybe just a little bit about the process that we're going through tonight and how that helps what happens next after our questions and our discussions? Thank you.
Okay, well, there's lots of concerns here. And so I don't think there's going to be anything getting approved here. This needs to go back to the drawing board in my mind. So I think that's probably what's going to end up happening, be a recommendation to send it back to staff. But we'll see that develop as we move along. So I can't really say right now, Councillor Cridland, what's going to come of it, but I'm not in favor of approving this the way it sits now, but discussions will lead us in whatever direction. So, Eric, do you have any direction that you expected us to go this evening?
To the mayor. No, I do note that Ms. Ivins talks about endorsement in a report, and that really would be something that, if you were comfortable with the justification that was put forward for some of these, you could do that, but ultimately we don't need any sort of justification or approval on this. It was here for discussion. The exercise is in draft. It is not, we've been back and forth with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs on this project, on the pieces of candidate lands that are up for consideration. The ultimate adoption of this would go forward in the regional official plan. So that's not until June of 2022. So, there's additional points for discussion. And I will note that we have an exercise, a council workshop with Wainfleet. I believe it's on March 31st to talk about items in the regional official plan. So, this could be a conversation we continue at that point. Really, it's we wanted to share this with you and get some feedback on it. And that's it. I don't necessarily need anything from you tonight. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. So it's really in its infancy. At this time, there's going to be a workshop and further discussion on that for sure. So, Councillor McClellan, you had your hand up again, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, sir, you've only showed us what's happened here in Wainfleet. I think on one of our maps, we did get a map of Fort Erie. That may have been a mistake, I'm not sure. But could you send us through what's happening in the other 12 municipalities? Because my gut feeling is this is a land grab to let it here so they can change land in North Niagara for residential and housing and say, well, there's a net zero loss in the Niagara region because we picked up another 900 hectares in Wainfleet and Fort Erie. So would you be so kind to send us those maps so that we can get a look at that and see that this is being done fairly across all of the region?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I believe Fort Erie has endorsed their mapping, and it may be what ended up partly in your agenda this evening. And I can certainly, we can share some of that further as we get along with our official plan project. I do believe we've got a draft mapping component coming up that we can probably circulate to you in May once we start to pull all of this together at once. I will note, however, that the Greenbelt municipalities are not open for any refinement. So that would be, anyone that's in North Niagara with land in the Greenbelt was not able to participate in this refinement exercise. So this is really limited to the growth plan municipalities. So West Lincoln, Wainfleet, Port Colborne, portions of Thorold, portions of Welland, Fort Erie, and then a bit of Niagara Falls. So it's not the full 12 that have the mapping consideration and mapping refinement options. So where we do have draft mapping changes, we will share that with you shortly, and we can probably talk about that a little bit further on the 31st, the workshop on the 31st.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Eric. Eric, I have a question. As I come from a farming family, is anybody who drove out here and did the site inspection, do they have agricultural background? Are they actual farmers? Do they know what black loam soil looks like, what clay soil looks like, what is actually usable farming soil?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I'm not certain how you'd like that question answered, but yes, 2 of the 4 staff come from an agricultural background. I think that's something that we try to manage on our agricultural work program at the region, that we've got appropriate staff engaged in the appropriate exercises.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to follow up on what Councillor Cridland noted, and I personally didn't note, so I need you to clear it up. She made a comment that it appeared like you were preserving and possibly expanding rural land, if I heard her right. I didn't hear that from you, so can you clear that up one way or the other?
Through the mayor to the council, yes, certainly. Just to clarify, the lands that are identified as candidate are currently designated rural. There's a mix. There's some that are rural, and there are some that are prime agriculture area under the region's official plan. What we've made the case for is preservation of approximately 600 acres of a mix of rural and prime area. So we could, if you want to get into the parcel by parcel piece of it, Ms. Ivins and I could crunch some more numbers and let you know exactly what the changes would be to to each of those designations.
Okay, well, my only concern is, are you proposing to take away rural land?
Yes.
Or add it? Let's just go with that simple question.
Through that, yeah, through the mayor, it would not add additional rural land beyond what is already identified.
So net zero? Or are you proposing, are we gonna lose, let's just ask this, are we gonna lose
Through
rural
the mayor,
land,
yes,
yes or
there
no?
is, the candidate lands contemplate the loss of some rural area. Yes.
Simple answer.
That's all I need to know, thanks.
So myself, on this, this needs a lot of work, Number one, I have concerns about drive-bys. Drive-by is not out walking on the land. So agricultural background or not, driving by does not let you really know what kind of soil you're in. 200 yards off the road could be, you could run into a clay bank that stretches for the rest of the whole area. So that I have concerns about. SME, subject matter expert, I'd like to know, what SMEs are we using? You're talking about a couple of your staff that have an agricultural background, but what kind of agricultural background is it? It could be a vintner or that sort of thing, again. Regarding the bog, the question that pops in my head is the NPCA is involved there. So have you spent time with them yet, or are they on board as one of your partners? Secondly, or thirdly, this whole thing needs to be collaborative with farmers in the area. And because the farmers are the ones that know, I talk to farmers and they say, oh yeah, everything north of here is a piece of, junk field. It's not worth farming. So this is all stuff that has to come out in my mind before we look at anything here. And with net zero loss or net negative loss of rural land, and as Councillor McClellan said, we are trying to, even just get a little piece of land that we can do some industrial growth, and we can't get that. And now we're looking at potentially losing more. And the province is bringing this down, and I'm not sure where the game is here, but this gets changed for us here in Wainfleet. It'll never get changed back. So we have to be very, very invested in this before we can accept it. So, Eric, just so you know that we're all concerned and definitely needs a lot of work on this from our end before we're happy as a council. So, Councillor Quillen, you had your hand up again.
Through you, Mayor, thank you for those remarks. I do want to go over the numbers and the language again. So if I'm not sure I've still got these clear. So the tone of our discussion sounds like we're losing. And yet what I think's happening is that the region is working to make sure we keep 685 of the 985 the province has identified as candidates, to keep it out of being a candidate. So maybe I'm missing it, and I obviously have to get on side with the concerns, but it would seem that there's only 300 hectares, I don't mean that only because that's a large amount, that will now be added to the prime agricultural total that was originally 995. So I don't think we're concerned about the 685, I might be, but council wants, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the 685 to be a bigger number to stay rural for growth or whatever. But I want to just be clear that the region's already got 685 for us out of this exercise. So Eric, maybe you could, I know the language is, the candidate part of it is throwing me off. It sounds like it's positive and it's kind of being negative. So, I'm sorry you have to do it one more time for me, but thank you.
Through the mayor, no, thank you, and that's okay. And the numbers are a little bit different. The 995 hectares was added as additional prime agricultural area. So that was done in 2018. That part is not open for discussion according to the province through this exercise. That 995 is done.
Yeah.
983 additional hectares were identified as candidate land. So these are lands in those red areas shown on the mapping that Ms. Ivan showed. And those are for consideration to be converted from their current use to prime agricultural area. And the majority of that land is rural land. So that's 983 hectares of mostly rural land. Some of it may be natural heritage land, but regardless, that's that 983 hectares. We have identified approximately 389 hectares of that candidate land for conversion to prime agriculture. That leaves
So I'm gonna just
approximately,
interrupt.
yeah. That leaves about 600 that we are suggesting to the province that is not appropriate for conversion. So it would stay as rural. Yeah. And for each
Okay,
of
so
those, we have, that's the
good.
numbers. Yeah.
Okay, so that seems to be the reverse of what maybe some of us are reacting to. So it's 685 of the 900 is hopefully going to end up rural for those that want it to stay rural. Unless council would like more of it. I'm not sure where we're going to land, but maybe we want more as prime agriculture when we're done our process or done our discussions, right?
No.
Okay, so I think I'm clearer. Thank you so much for going through that again. I have no further questions. Thank you very much for the presentation and the time.
So my concern is the process here. Eric, what is the workshop? How does that's going to be here, or is it going to be virtual, obviously? How's this going to work? Because I think we all need more information, and we need more details on each one of these pieces of land that are potentially going to change, so that they can really be looked at. I personally would talk to farmers in the area and find out, what kind of land is this? That's really the way to do it properly. So you're saying, what was it, March 31st?
March 31st to the mayor. Yeah, March 31st is a council workshop on the the entirety of the official plan. So it's all sorts of topic areas related to the new regional official plan, but this we identified agricultural mapping as an area that would probably be of interest to Wainfleet Council. So we do have some time set up to go over that.
Okay, so that will give us time we can speak with our planner and learn as much as we can about this and be more informed. It's difficult to do and really to understand it all in 20 minutes. So any other questions? Councillor Van Vliet.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Eric, I just have one question. You might have already answered the question, but I'm just going back to, why are we doing this? Why is this being imposed on us? If it's not broke, why do we need to be fixed?
Through the mayor to the councillor, this is an exercise that has been offered through the growth plan, through the conformity exercise that the region has to undertake with the province's growth plan. You could opt out of this exercise. There's nothing that's obligating us to do this or to comment on these candidate lands. I will note, though, that the format that this has been presented to us in relies on us to comment or seeks our input on these and seeks it through us using a coding system that's been prepared by OMAFRA to justify why lands should not be included. If we don't participate in this exercise and we don't offer any feedback, the final determination of how these candidate lands are designated will be entirely up to the province. It is up to the province, but it would be up to the province with no local input. So what we presented or what we've put together, we thought was a balance of something defensible and something justifiable. But if this is not the desire of Wainfleet to participate in that, that is a discussion we can have, and we could leave this up to the folks at OMAFRA to figure out on our behalf. But I think we probably don't want to do that.
Yeah, we definitely don't. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McClellan, you had your hand up again, please.
Yeah, just one comment on the way this is right now is totally unacceptable to this town. So we've got to find a way to make this work or change this up. So yes, on March 31st, but if we can have meetings ahead of that or get something going, because this is totally unacceptable. And to come at us at this point, this is just wrong. The region's supposed to be looking out for us, not putting the boots to us.
Okay, thank you for that comment. We're all on the same page here, I believe. This seems to be an unfortunate thing happening from the province, but we certainly would not want to just not do anything, in my opinion. Who knows what will happen with that without our input, so we need to have input. So I need some time to look at it more and understand it more clear. It's a little bit, confusing in some sense. And like I said, there's certainly some farmers out there that would be interested in looking at this or having discussions about this as well. So I guess so we just basically wait until the March 31st meeting, and in the meantime, council can do discussion on that and can meet with Sarah or talk to Sarah and to gather further information. So any other comments or discussion?
Donna's got her hand up.
Oh, Councillor Cridland.
Sorry, I was just going to make the motion then to receive the memo.
Sure, we can receive the memo from our staff. Seconder, please. Councillor McClellan. Any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none. Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
I'm in favor. That's carried. Okay, so that's where it sits. Both reports are received, and we will work away at this and get a better understanding of it and do some homework, and then we'll be much better prepared for March 31st. Thank you very much, Eric, for coming and speaking this evening.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. Have a good rest of the night.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move on now to item 11, the second delegation. Ann Yagi, Kathy Blott, 8 Trees Incorporated. Submission of consideration of an alternative to recommendation listed in Drainage Staff Report 004-2021, re the Biederman Drain relocation request. Are you folks there?
Yes, we're there.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Okay, so this has been spoken to before, so it must be new information that we addressed today. And
Yes, we are.
okay, and you have 10 minutes. At 9 minutes, I will say 1 minute left, and then I'll ask you to wrap up, please. You may be.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate having this opportunity to address the town about our preferred recommendation, which is to move the 1.2 kilometer section of Biederman Drain back to its original alignment. We want to thank the drainage staff for preparing a report and giving us a chance to review and comment. Our delegation was waiting on YouTube. I'm not sure if they have the right link though. And that consists of representatives of the Toronto Zoo, Six Nations, Ontario Parks, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, Wildlife Research, University of Waterloo, Brock University, Laurentian University, Wildlife Preservation Canada, and Landcare Niagara. Now, Kathy Blott here is our Habitat Restoration Associate, and she's been actively involved in the hydrology parts of the project. And she's our liaison with the Conservation Authority and Lowland Farms, or the 2 landowners affected by this request. So, Your Worship, Mayor Gibson, may Kathy continue to address the council from here for a discussion?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Okay, you may begin.
Hello. There. Thank you very much, Mayor Gibson and councillors. As Ann said, thank you very much. We appreciate the chance to be able to come and speak again. And we'd like to say thank you very much to Mark, as Ann said as well, for preparing that report. It was very important to lay out some of things that council needs to consider. And I'm here to just talk about a couple of those things to start with. I'm hoping that folks were able to read some of the comments that we were able to add to the report. And we're hoping that that will then help us move along the discussion. As Ann said, we're here with a delegation. And so one of the things I want to clarify is that we're not here to make the request. We are here as a group of representatives to advise council that there is an extremely great opportunity here in front of us because that Drainage Act, or because this drainage improvement project is going on. I think that Mark's report said the last time was 40 years ago in the 1980s, when the bog was being mined was the last time there was an opportunity for the drain to be moved back. So that's one thing that I just want to say. We're not making the request. We're here to advise council that there's an incredible opportunity here. So, and another thing that we just want to clarify and make sure that everybody understands is that the Drainage Act allows council to make the decision of their own initiative. The request, can be made by council of their own initiative. It can also be made by a landowner. And I want to be very clear to say to you that we have spoken with the NPCA as the existing landowner, and they have advised us that they are willing to move ahead in the process, but that they don't want to be the ones to make the request, because they advise us that they do not have the resources and the resources, like they don't have the manpower and the resources to be able to see that request through. So our delegation is here to ask council to take the initiative and to work with us as a group to make the request. And I'm here to also say that I've spoken with Bill Young, who's the owner of the land that has the original alignment, Lowland Farms. And he has said to me, when I asked him, are you willing to consider this? And he said, yes. So we're at the very, very beginning of the process where somebody has to make the request. And we're here to ask you folks to please make the request. And we're here to say to you that, as Barry Warner put it, he's one of our delegates from the University of Waterloo. He's one of the top wetland bog experts in Canada. And he said to us when we came to him and said, we finally got this opportunity, he said, we've got everything to gain and nothing to lose by putting that drain back to where it was originally built. So I would like to say that where the drain was originally built was right through Bill's property called Lowlands Farms. And it was put there because it was built to drain the farmland. It's the most effective place for building the farm, or for draining the farmland where it was originally built. It was moved to the current location specifically to drain the bog. It was moved right up into the edge of the bog specifically to drain it. And that's what we've been living with for the last 40 years. Now I'm going to move on to talk about a little bit of financing, because thank you to Mark again, because it's important for us to know how much does it cost. And I'm here to tell you that that amount that Mark has said that it would cost is very feasible. We do not have any problem getting that kind of money for this kind of work. The Wainfleet Bog is being considered as a key biodiversity in Canada. It is considered to be like the most southern bog in Ontario, and it is a very significant area. But what I would like to focus on regarding financing is that the future maintenance of if we were to put that drain back to where it used to be, running through the fields, your future maintenance will be very simple. Because I know Bill Young, and he is on his property every day, and you will not have any dams to remove out of that section ever again. But we've just gone through several years of pulling dams out of the drain where it exists today. And it will be an ongoing battle forever, trying to keep beaver dams out of that section of the drain that runs right up against the edge of the bog. So you will forever be having to battle that, and you will forever be having to clear the land to get in there to do that work. So that's a financial concern. If you're going to consider finance, you must look at the future finance and what will be required to maintain that drain through the field, or what would be required to maintain a drain through that edge of the bog where you've got a lot of rare species that you will have to get permitting around, and you have a lot of beavers that are part of that ecosystem, and they will always be there. And I'm going to just sum up by saying that, again, like the delegation that we have here, they include specialists in restoration. They include specialists in the Drainage Act and people that have done many drainage improvement projects that cooperatively pull together drainage improvement works with wetland restoration and species at risk recovery. And I'm here to say that I'm representing the people right now, but we're all here, and I wish you could see them, because there would be probably at least 20 people standing here with us to say to you that we will provide the expertise, we will bring the money to the table, and we will do the outreach, and we will make sure that this rolls out so that it works properly and so that everybody is happy and there are no surprises at the end. And I'm here to say also that, as Anne pointed out, this is an extremely unique opportunity. And and we're asking you folks to please
Last minute,
consider
Kathy.
making the request. And it's a big thing that would achieve great milestones, and it would work better for farming, work better for drainage for farmers, and work better for that ecological system. So we're asking you to please make the request to ask the engineer to take the next step in the drainage process towards realigning back to the original alignment. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your discussion. And so what we'll do is have questions of the presenter, and then we'll receive that report, and then we'll bring our drainage superintendent in, and it'll all be one package, and we'll have a full discussion on that. So, questions to the presenter, please. Okay, I don't see any questions to the presenter. Councillor Cridlin, I didn't miss you. No? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Again, we have heard from this delegation, so I think we've got everything clarified. So thank you again for coming back after the report was put in the agenda tonight. So all the other comments are going to help us when we do get to talk to our staff again on this tonight. Maybe though, one question would be, what's the closest project like the one that you're proposing that your team has done in either recent or otherwise? So if you can just name either another municipality or something of this scope. Thank you.
Kathy, you want to do it, or do you want me to do it?
Oh, you go ahead, Anne.
Okay, so of this scope, it's incredibly unique. This is the first time that a bog has been so severely drained, been restored to this degree, because it was just so highly impacted. we've worked many years studying it and collecting the data to justify the project. Okay. And we've had that reviewed by other experts to make sure we're on the right track. Other projects in this area that we've worked on in terms of wetland restoration or smaller in scale in terms of slough forests, agricultural fields that have been degraded. And the nearest places we're working right now is actually in Fort Erie. There's several projects in Fort Erie we're targeting, trying to recondition the soil after farming's been in place. It really does destroy the soil, and trying to get the wetlands, the sloughs that form in our nice little woodlands back to support frogs again instead of being drained too fast by the drainage and the agricultural activity mostly. So that's a good example. So that's in Fort Erie, and the sites at Netherby Road and QEW that we're targeting right now. And we're trying to work with the local conservation authority and teach them about some of the restoration techniques that we're doing. I've worked a lot on streams, restoration of trout streams in North Pelham, and the Frenchman's Creek in Fort Erie. Again, there's a lot of activity actually in Fort Erie directed towards ecological restoration. In that case, it was actually removing dams to facilitate fish movement, to restoring banks. And that was done in the 90s, and that was near Bowen Road in Fort Erie. As another example, there's a golf course example
Anne,
too. Yes.
Well, Anne, I was actually looking specifically, sorry to interrupt, but any municipalities that you've been working with in the last, let's say, 12 or 24 months?
12 or 20 municipalities would be mostly Fort Erie right now.
So with their council, or with
not
people,
directly with council, with
NGOs?
staff, more with staff
in the
Fort Erie area.
That's great. Thank you very much then
You're
for that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of our presenter? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to receive that report, and then we'll go to our drainage superintendent. Motion to receive it, Councillor McClellan, seconded by Councillor Gilmore. Any further discussion? Okay, in favor or opposed, Councillor McClellan, Councillor Van Vliet,
In favor.
Councillor Cridland,
In favor.
and Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Okay, so that report is received. I now go to Mark Jemison, our drainage superintendent, for his discussion and report.
Great, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the staff report was just in response to the delegation we originally received last month. So in speaking with the other involved property owners, they were not in support of submitting the request themselves. So council has the authority to do that as well. There's a lot of different pieces at play here, and the recommendation of the staff report is to pursue an alternative project involving all the different parties off of the municipal drain. And that way we're able to use all the surveying, the engineering, design, and the regulatory reviews that have already been completed on the municipal drain. I've been made aware that the Conservation Authority has been in the process of striking a working group for the Wainfleet Bog as well to work on updating some of those as well. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of our superintendent? Okay, seeing none, I guess we have a motion to receive his report. Councillor McClellan, seconded by Councillor Van Vliet. And any discussion? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, you make a recommendation with a certain direction, and I'm wondering, is that direction that in the report align with the goals of the delegation, or is it in contrary to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to speak for the delegation, but previously an alternative project was proposed by this group to myself, the drainage staff from City of Port Colborne, and Spreet Associates, the engineering firm that's working on this, and Conservation Authority. So in the staff report, I mentioned that that is one of the alternatives, one of the options, but based on that recommendation and involving other stakeholders, there could be an alternative identified as well. The main piece of My recommendation is to leave the drain in place to help facilitate the work that's already been done on the municipal drain project, so we can carry on with that.
Councillor Gilmore, follow-up?
Okay, I'll try another route. Does the whole Biederman drain require a complete section 78? Should we so choose to relocate it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the Biederman drain is currently being updated under section 78 actively. So the city of Port Colborne initiated that project in 2019. The downstream municipality typically initiates drain projects under section 78. So the city of Port Colborne initiated the report update to facilitate updating the assessment schedule and the catchment area. Because we look at the drain as a whole, the Township of Wainfleet was involved in that as well. So yes, the active section 78 is ongoing, and in my opinion, it is required.
Okay, follow-up?
So it obviously isn't complete, so the engineer hasn't completed the 78, so we don't know whether the engineer would support or not support this, or do we have that information?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, the engineer has fully surveyed the drain and has fully designed the drain as it is in its current location. So last year, the township did some maintenance on the drain to facilitate that. We did mowing of the drain to allow them to get in and get access. And then following that, the engineer has done the design. Once the design is completed from the engineering standpoint, they typically submit it to the Conservation Authority and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans for review. That takes anywhere from 2 months to a year. For this one, it took about 7 months after the engineer submitted that to the Conservation Authority and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans before getting their kind of unofficial sign off on the design. So the drain has been designed where it is in place now, with slight deepening, slight widening, and some improved culvert accesses at most of the roadways and the farm crossing. So it has been designed, and that is kind of why this recommendation is to leave it in place and identify an alternative project that can take place off of the municipal drain.
Was this proposal on the table at the time that the engineer went back and did the 78 and redesign? Did the company know about this proposal?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the Drainage Act requires that those types of requests come from landowners. The on-site meeting was held last March. Every landowner in Wainfleet was invited. 3 landowners were in attendance from Wainfleet. There were additional landowners present from Port Colborne, and I believe 8 Trees was present as well. At that time, there was no requests for any type of relocation or any requests above and beyond the scoping of the engineer's report as provided by City of Port Colborne.
So what I see here is this. We don't know sitting here whether the drain would be beneficial in its new location or not. 8 Trees is saying it would be, and it would benefit the bog. You would have to have not just consent, but very much in favor the NPCA of changing the current drain to out in the field. You would have to have the full consent of Port Colborne. You would have to have the engineer from Sprite say, sure, that's a great idea. It can work out there, no problem. You would have to have both or all landowners with proper written permission, I'll use that word, to us to say, yeah, we're very much in favor of it, or we don't, it doesn't matter to us, go ahead. And then we would have to have a significant deposit of funds from this organization before anything got done. And then we'd have to look at it and say, is it a good thing still? So to me, this is, it's a half-baked cake. We need a heck of a lot more information, I believe, from all persons involved before we can make any decision here. Because I don't know, you're saying the landowner's in favor, but in our world, we need legal, we need that on paper, authorized and by a commissioner. We need all the landowners to say, yes, this is fine by us. We just can't take the word of someone who says they're on board. And secondly, even if the landowner was on board today and he says, yes, go ahead, a year from now they may change their mind. So we need that all done legally. There needs to be some significant work done here, and all stakeholders consenting and agreeing. I personally, it's a bog. It's great, let's protect it, but there's a lot of interested parties here who all have to come together to make this work. And if one of them says no, then we're on an uphill battle. So that's my opinion. So at this point, I don't think that we should be doing any motions on this. Councillor McLeod.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the one thing that I noticed you forgot in your long list, which was good, is in the future, all landowners are supposed to pay for the drainage to improve from it. So is the MPCA going to say, well, they're not draining our bog anymore, so we're not paying for that, and which drives the cost up to every other landowner all the way down along the line. So that's something that we got to make sure that's not going to happen, because the next time we clean it, the landowners won't be able to afford it. It's not fair.
Yeah, that's another key point here that complicates it. Councillor Van Vliet.
I'd like to make the motion that we go with recommendation number 1. That Mark's recommending. That we not support the relocation.
Okay, so Councillor Van Vliet has made a motion to support recommendation number 1. Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Gilmore has seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, opposed or in favor of that motion? Councillor McCall? Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore?
Favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
I'm in favor, and so that is carried. So thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll move forward looking at alternative projects and see what we can do to make this work for everybody. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Mr. Jameson. We're going to move on now to some staff reports, and we'll look to our CAO to give his COVID staff report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. Very quickly, this is another regular monthly update on the status of COVID-19 and the ongoing state of emergency that exists here in the township, and we are approaching the 1-year mark very quickly. At this time, I would note as a change from our last report is that Niagara is now in the red control zone effective March 1st. The decision was based on advice provided through medical experts both here at the region and province-wide, and the sort of relaxing of restrictions from the gray to the red are summarized both in the report as well as on the townships and the region's websites. So that is one sort of positive move in the right direction on our part. The other, I suppose, breaking and evolving news at the moment is the status of vaccinations. At the time of writing of this report, there were 2 approved vaccines in Canada, and we are now up to 4 approved vaccines in Canada. And the situation is evolving quickly as even the original vaccines, which proposed a minimum second dosage response time of in the neighborhood of, I think it was 6 weeks or so, has been expanded to 16 weeks, 4 months. So there have been significant changes to the plans in administering vaccines. That said, Niagara is utilizing the same distribution plan that was established by the province, and it basically breaks the vaccines distribution into 3 different phases, with the first phase being the most at-risk populations, moving to the perhaps lesser at-risk but still significant risk populations. And then phase 3 will see the general population and everyone else being vaccinated on demand. Again, for the Township of Wainfleet's role, we have been working with Niagara Region and Public Health to identify a location here in Wainfleet that will be able to provide vaccination services to our residents. And it's our community hall located adjacent to the fire hall that will be providing those vaccinations once the vaccine thresholds are appropriately met. We anticipate that the region will be providing additional announcements and information about the distribution of vaccines in the coming weeks, particularly once March 15th rolls around and the province's general online vaccine registration program is up and running. What else do we have to talk about? Unfortunately, I have bad news about the arena. We did have to pull the ice on that following our discussions last month and the extended continuation of the gray zone. So at this time, the ice surface is out and will not be reinstated until the next ice season in the fall. But rest assured that staff are also exploring options based on availability of the facility to potentially look at installing the ice earlier to perhaps extend the season if that's possible. Again, we do have a variety of other events that happen in and around the arena, but depending on how things unfold from a COVID perspective, if we can get the ice in sooner, we will certainly try to do so. One other element, and Mayor Gibson mentioned this earlier in his report, we have been working, trying to reinstate the region's well or private water quality testing program. We had some good news that came in earlier this week. Today's Tuesday, so earlier this week. And we're in the sort of home stretch to getting that system up and running. And that includes setting up Town Hall for the first time as a site where residents can pick up and drop off samples for testing. Once we get the final details in our hands, we'll be announcing that, and it will certainly be commencing prior to the end of the month. So keep your eyes open, and we'll be posting information as soon as it becomes available. And then finally, the last item that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention is that on March 4th, the province announced a further additional funding program to assist the province's 444 municipalities with COVID-19 operating cost subsidies for 2021. Based on our household count and the sort of proliferation of COVID-19 in our area, the Township of Wainfleet has been allocated a little over $158,000 for the year to help us through that process. So that is the summary of my report. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer. Otherwise, we'll look forward to updating you again in about a month.
Okay, thank you. So I just a motion that admin staff report 003-2021 respecting COVID-19 be received for information. Mover seconder, Councillor McClellan, Councillor Van Vliet, and discussion, please. Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I just got a quick question. Since we were in the gray, and in lockdown longer, have we been recognized has Niagara been recognized as a hotspot, and do we get to move up the vaccination list?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not aware that that's the case. That is something I can pose through my sources or my question here, my route, and I'll try to get an answer for you.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
So to that, I know in a few older people in St. Catharines, and I shouldn't say that, but they are getting their vaccinations starting tomorrow. So maybe we did move up a bit, but it is going on for older citizens. And the other question I have, Will, is I received a phone call from a lacrosse league that was wondering if we would rent out the arena for box lacrosse practices. I don't know if anybody ever got a phone call from them, but I gave them the number to call Town Hall, right? So I don't know what happened with that, but might be a couple of dollars.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, any sort of inquiries about facility rentals, by all means, can be made through our operations and rec department. The key thing is we are still in red, and there are restrictions continue about the uses that can occur, the number of people that can participate, the types of activities that can be occurring. But by all means, if there is a sort of program or activity that fits within the provincial and the regional guidelines, and if we can accommodate that, by all means, we'll do what we can to accommodate.
Okay, thank you.
And I do know of at least one couple seniors here in Wainfleet who have received their vaccination. So I think they're over 80, so they probably traveled up to the hospital, St. Catharines or something, to receive it, but they did receive it. So the system is slowly coming online and beginning to work the way it should. Any other discussion? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Will, do you know if, is Niagara Region going to set up their own portal, or do we have to go through the provincial portal? Like lots of other municipalities here have their own, and they're well ahead of us as far as what's going on. That's one question. And secondly, are you aware whether they're going to, when we get around to doing the general population, are they going to start with the areas that are and have been the problem? And since we bounce between 1, 2, and 3 active cases, are we going to be at the bottom of the list, the rest of us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and again, with respect to the first question about the portal, it's my understanding that Niagara Region will be using the province's program in order to register persons coming in for their vaccinations. So Niagara did not set up their own separate system. They are using the provincial one, which is due to be released, I believe, early next week. It is intended, as I understand it, to be quite a robust program that will give a lot of flexibility and opportunity for people registering through it to select the sort of everything from the location that they want to go to the time they want to go. And there will be opportunities, again, for people to access if, for example, someone lives in Wainfleet but works in another Niagara municipality, they would have the opportunity to register and perhaps attend a site for a vaccination in their place of work. So if they could do it during lunch hour, for example, which is really intended to be make it more convenient and make it more accessible for the public to be vaccinated. The second part of your question talked about the sort of timelines and sort of distribution. In phase 1 of the distribution of vaccines, they are targeting the most the populations that are most vulnerable, and generally those populations are being identified by caregivers, and those vaccinations are being arranged. Once they start moving to the broader general populace, including the age groups under the age of 80, there will be an opportunity for the public to sort of come forward, and it's less the government going to people and having the people go to the government saying, I'm ready, I want it done. And that is the sort of intent with that. And actually just today we updated our website at wainfleet.ca, where we actually have a news section that provides some more details on the way that will unroll. And as I understand it, again, because all the changes in the number of vaccines and the timing for dosage doses and all that sort of stuff has been modified over the course of the last 7 days even. I believe the intent is that the general population below the age of 60 will have the opportunity to have their shots by as early as July, August. So things are moving forward in that direction. Did I answer everything, or was there?
Go ahead, Councillor Gilmore.
Just one more question. If you get an opportunity, could you find out what a person who is, quote, a certain worker, a certain person who is unable to work from home? If you ever get a chance, could you find out who that would be? Certain persons who are unable to work from home. I'd be curious to know what qualifies you to be that certain person. That would be just some personal information I wouldn't mind having.
And just in regards to today at Public Health, I spoke about this. They were talking about the communication piece and getting the information out about registering and that sort of thing. In British Columbia, they've already done this, and they used a phone system. And on the first hour, they had over 1 million calls, and then the first day was 1.7 million calls. Totally crashed the system. So even though we are speaking about a robust system here, be it online and or telephone, both, to the public, be prepared. You're probably, very potentially not going to get through on your first call, and it may take a day or two. Hopefully our system is better than the British Columbia system, which didn't work at all for a few days. So 1.7 million calls the very first day, crashed the system. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing to receive the report, Councillor McClellan, Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And that report is received. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the summary of our building activity within the township. Report 001-2021, and I think we have Mr. Gudgeon available to discuss that or answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as suggested, this represents the annual report for the building department for the year 2020. We had, as council recalls, moved to a system whereby we were doing quarterly update reports and then doing an annual report as well, just on the highest level strategic elements of the building department. And this represents that report for council's information.
Thank you. So a motion, a building staff report, BSR 001-2021, respecting summary of 2020 building activity within the Township of Wainfleet be received for information. I need a mover and a seconder on that. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor McClellan. Okay, and discussion. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the report. I just want to make a request that this report be attached to the report that's going to come when we review the development charges bylaw, because there's information in here that I don't want to have to go on a paper chase for when we talk about development charges. Because there's information here that I think may impact our discussion, so it would be helpful if it was attached. Thanks. Thank you.
Any other discussion on our building report? Did you have a comment, Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to confirm for the councillor that we'll make sure that that information is appended at that time as a request. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm just going to also thank you for the report, but just revisit. We during budget we talked about briefly, at least, activity levels. I think it was in this department. And maybe I missed some of it in the budget discussion, but these numbers don't seem to be, you know, that much higher than what we've experienced in the past. Can you just maybe make a comment? Maybe it's the texture of them, or there's something more there that, of course, I might be missing. So thank you.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cridlin and all of Council. Certainly, yeah, there's, it's not so much how it appears sort of when we look back in the sense of where we have been, but rather in what direction we are headed. And we're certainly trending in an upwards fashion again. As you know, we have at various times, there's ebb and flow in the past, but we're certainly trending higher. We're also seeing different quality to the level of permits, with upwards of 85% of the permits being residential, which it becomes less an issue of quantity and more an issue of the quality of the permits, what qualities those have. And so that's certainly what we're seeing. So again, this is the kind of information that we're looking at, like where have we been and where are we certainly is important, but where are we headed? And we're looking to get ahead of a curve here. This report certainly shows the trend, but it doesn't even hint at some of the larger projects that we have on the horizon. So again, we're anticipating those and wanting to be ahead of the curve.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Councillor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on Councillor Cridlin's question and Lee's answer, just a reminder that since at least 2018 and maybe prior, the chief building inspector had 2 part-time people that were doing inspections. I'm sure it was at least for the last 2 years and maybe 3. So just sort of a reminder to Councillor Cridlin's comment that there has been ongoing extra support in that department for the last number of years.
Okay. Any other further comment? Okay, seeing none.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, if I may, just to acknowledge the councillor's discussion. Certainly, yes. You know, there has been that support there. The primary motivator, and I mean, to be frank, the person providing that support is now our CBO, and most of the impetus and the energy that goes into making the department run is now at the helm. And the other point that I didn't really mention here, and I think council is alluding to it, though, is that there is the pandemic effect on the numbers as well. So these numbers are really based on about 9 months as well, because we were not issuing permits and with the lockdown and everything for about a quarter of the year. So that sort of throws a bit of a wrench into it. But I hope that provides some clarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything further on this one? Okay, seeing no further comments. In favor or opposed of receiving the report, Councillor McClellan, Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
And that is carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to our proposed fence bylaw, and I think we have Mr. Tardif with us to speak to that, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to all of council. This memo is bringing forward the proposed amendment that was talked about at the last council meeting. Section 12.1 is recommended to be removed to allow existing fences to be repaired or replaced. And that work will be done and their fence will still be in compliance with the bylaw as discussed at the previous council meeting. So this proposal and attachment is just the amended bylaw that removes section 12.1 and just a brief summary of why we're doing this.
Okay, thank you. Motion that the memorandum from the bylaw officer respecting proposed fence bylaw be received for information. Mover seconder on that, please. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor Van Vliet. And any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. In favor or opposed, Councillor McClellan. Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And that is carried. Okay, we move on to the memo regarding off-road vehicles bylaw. And Mr. Tardif, would you speak to that one as well, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to all of council. This memo is bringing forward a proposed off-road vehicle bylaw that was discussed at the last council meeting. As you are aware from last meeting, that the province changed regulations that would allow off-road vehicles to drive on roads that have a speed limit of 80 kilometers an hour. So this proposed bylaw will restrict the use of off-road vehicles being operated on the township roads. As we discussed at the last council meeting, essentially a reset back to December 31st, 2020. They would not be allowed. Then at a later date, once restrictions lift and we can have public meetings, the intent is to have a public meeting to get the residents' input on this issue, and then bring another report back to council. And this bylaw may be amended at that time if council chooses to change some of the restrictions up. That's the basis of this report.
Okay, thank you. So I look for a mover and a seconder to put this memorandum from the bylaw enforcement officer respecting off-road vehicles on the floor, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. And discussion. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mark. Mark, we at the last meeting we talked about whether crown highways or regional roads were going to be included. Maybe it's in here in the legalese, but what's the English version?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Gilmore and the rest of council. So the Ontario regulations are conflicting. The memo that we have received said roads in the municipality that have 80 kilometer an hour speed limit, which means any road. However, the Ontario regulation for off-road vehicles states that it must be a road that the municipality has jurisdiction in. So in speaking with legal counsel, this bylaw was drafted that we only have authority to enact a bylaw with roads we have jurisdiction over. So Highway 3 and any regional road would not be included in this off-road vehicles bylaw.
Okay, Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mark. Now that I've given this a little bit of thought, do we actually need a bylaw, and how would we police it when people already do this all the time?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Van Vliet and the rest of council. So again, part of the recommendation in speaking with the Niagara Regional Police was if there was nothing in place, then there's little we can do if just say we got overrun with off-road vehicles. There would be no enforcement measures that we could take. It would just have to be something that we could accept. And this was foreseen to be a major issue when in discussions with Niagara Regional Police. And as far as enforcement goes, this is strictly a police initiative. Bylaw officers do not have authority to pull vehicles over. That's strictly police. So police would be enforcing this. I would go on the assumption, as they do now, or as they did back in December of 2020, it's just based on a complaint call-in system, that they wouldn't be out patrolling looking for this. They would only be reactive.
Councillor Van Vliet, carry on.
Okay, because in the village on the weekend, there was probably about 10 to 15 off-road vehicles that just went straight down Clarendon. So And we've all been doing it for years, so I still don't understand why I need a bylaw in place. Again, if it's not broke, what are we fixing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Van Vliet. That is council's discretion. I'm just providing the information, and I will move forward on any direction council sees appropriate.
Okay, I look to the, Councillor Cridlin, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Again, staff, thank you very, very much for pulling this back so quickly. Again, it's one of these things that gets thrown at us, and we made our best guess last time. We've also, since that time, some of us have received excellent emails from the residents. This did hit the news, which is good. Again, this is a provincial, I think this is a provincial matter. I don't mind hitting the pause button and let's see what happens. Bylaws in general are complicated at the best of times. I think Councillor Van Vliet, when you realize that everybody's actually using the roads already, I think we might be adding an extra layer here that is going to make things more complicated. So I'm prepared to leave this or set this aside now, and let's see what happens. Let's see what the police have. If there's lots of concerns, then as our existing police matters, they'll get escalated accordingly. I could add that we got put on this special list by the province, so the province may be able to take us off this special list. So that's another avenue if this is too much, access to our roads. So if we're ready with this draft, again, I think it's good to have it where it is, but I don't mind setting it aside, and I'll wait to hear what my other councillors have in terms of going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I seem to recall that Richard Nand advised us that there was a number of legal issues with this going down. Some of our shoulders aren't wide enough. We have a number of problems that he brought up, and we may be putting ourselves in a situation to get sued.
By enacting the bylaw or by
not enacting the bylaw,
okay.
Because then we are saying our roads are safe for these vehicles to drive on the shoulders to, and some of our shoulders, I wouldn't want to be coming down the feeder and meeting two cars, so.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I received a number of phone calls as well, and a couple emails I forwarded off to everybody there. The main gist of those inquiries were, why do anything? It's worked fine the way it has been for all these years. Explained that by, bringing in the bylaw, we're taking it back to the way it was. But the one comment was, well, if a problem develops, then we'll deal with that at the time. Then we may have to put a bylaw in place. But there hasn't been a problem for years and years and years. So those comments kind of rang true to me, and Councillor Cridlin's comments sort of are where I'm landing as well. I'm just not sure if we want to jump in on this right now, and there's maybe one of those things that we could sit and take a look at further down the road. That's my thoughts on it. So, Councillor McClellan, you have further comment?
Again, I worry about putting us at risk. I don't know if the CAO wants to speak to that, or?
Yeah, go ahead, Will.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. Again, as was mentioned, I think the intent of the bylaw that's being presented this evening as a result of the discussions you had at the last council meeting was something similar to an interim control bylaw, if you will, in the planning sense. There were a set of rules that were in place that were established by the province, and they've been in place for decades up until December of last year. And in December of last year, the province basically eliminated the rule completely, which allowed these off-road vehicles to be operated legally on all highways in accordance with the provincial framework. So prior to January of this year, it was contrary to the law to operate those vehicles on township roads. And again, for the last number of decades, when we maintain roads, when we inspect roads, when we perform maintenance, when we make improvements or do snow plowing, we maintain those roads for normal vehicular traffic and to some extent some pedestrian traffic. But we don't make any sort of allocations or any sort of accommodations to permit off-road vehicles to be used on them, because in the past the province did not allow them to operate on those roadways. With the change, again, this bylaw was intended to be sort of a temporary pause, just to keep things the way they were, to permit the township to undertake some consultation with the broader public, to do some more investigation with other municipalities that permit these vehicles onto their roadways, to see if they have to make changes with the way they maintain roads, to see if there are standards about certain roads having minimum widths in order to allow off-road vehicles on them in association or in conjunction with regular motor vehicles or pedestrians or whatever the case might be. So there are, as Councillor McClellan indicated, certain risks, and it really is a balancing act. And I think the intent of this bylaw and the recommendation that came forward at the last meeting was to just put a pause on things, to allow us to undertake that investigation, so that when council makes a final determination, it's making it fully informed with all the sort of details before it. Again, it is certainly council's ability to not pass a bylaw, in which case we're operating solely under provincial rule. If that is the case, as indicated at the last meeting, we may need to come before you to make some recommendations about roads and road maintenance and all that sort of stuff anyway. So really, it's sort of in council's hands as to which direction you want to go. One is put in the freeze right now and then do the investigation and then loosen it up. Or the other option is don't put in the freeze, it's wide open territory now, and then you'll have to tighten things up later. So really, it's a tough decision.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. CAO, giving us that tough decision. The motion's on the floor right now just to receive that report. I think we have to follow through with that, and then if there's a motion, if somebody wants to make a motion one way or the other there, we could follow up with that afterwards. So just to receive this report but not approve the draft amendment here, just to receive his report. Any other discussion on that? Okay, in favor or opposed? Councillor McClellan in favor. Councillor Van Vliet. We're just receiving the report. We are not approving
In favor.
That change to the bylaw. Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
Councillor Cridland.
And I'm just going to clarify that you've made this a two-step process.
Yes, I have.
By receiving, we haven't made any decision. Thank
That's
you.
right.
In favor?
Yes, I've clearly stated that. All we're doing is receiving that report. And so now I look to the councillors. Is anybody interested in making a motion in which direction you want to go here? Councillor McClellan.
So I'd like to make a comment first. If we put it as a stopgap measure, when you open it up, it's easy to open it up and let it go. If we let it go wide open today and find out 6 months later that this is a disaster, now you have to try and reel people back in from a supposed freedom that they had to do it. I think we're better to put this as a stopgap measure and hold things up as a temporary bylaw till we see what's happening and let Richard and the rest of the staff figure out what's going on.
Okay, so
that would be
you are making a motion then
Yes.
to have us approve the temporary bylaw as written in the memo from our Mark. Okay, so do you have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Gilmore is seconded. And, oh, I see our deputy
something
clerk
wrong.
is waving her finger.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council, the bylaw is actually on the agenda for consideration. So a motion technically doesn't need to be made unless council is planning to make another recommendation to go against that. So like I said, it is on the agenda for consideration. So a motion technically doesn't need to be passed at this time to support that going forward.
So, but if somebody wanted to oppose it and go the opposite direction, then we need the motion for that. Okay. So, does anybody wish to make that motion to not enact the bylaw? Councillor Van Vliet?
Yeah, I want to make that motion. I don't think there's a problem. We've always been
You
doing
don't want
it.
any bylaw? Okay. Is there a seconder for that? And that's Councillor Cridland is seconding
Okay,
it.
good.
Okay, and now discussion, any further discussion? So that is that there is no bylaw. The bylaw that is attached here in the documentation will not be adopted, and then there's no bylaw. So, which means our roads will be wide open for use. Councillor Van Vliet.
I'm just wondering if you wanted my reasoning behind it. Is because we don't have a bylaw in place now. Everybody's been doing what they've been doing for years. The only thing is now it's legal, which nobody knew it was legal. I don't think we're opening the door to a whole bunch of people who are going to come from out of town to go on our gravel roads with their equipment. That costs a lot of money to go on gravel roads with those kind of tires. So we don't have the trails for it. Those of us who live there know where to go. So I don't think we need a bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Councillor Gilmore.
Okay, just so I'm clear, the bylaws on the bylaws already written. We should, in my mind, we should just either vote yea or nay on the bylaw rather than making another motion about something that we can vote down. So I think we're out of order.
Thank you.
I do want to talk about it, but before I talk about it, I want to get back into some form of order. So in my view, the motion's out of order. The bylaw's on the floor. We should talk about it as we've kind of done, and then vote yea or nay on the bylaw as it's written.
Okay.
That's just my 2 cents.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Councillor Cridland, you had your hand up. Oh, no, Councillor Gilmore, you have comment.
Yes, well,
Sorry.
Councillor Cridland, I think, was just affirming my, my point of order, so to speak. So, I just want to make a comment. It's kind of ironic that we're passing, or the bylaw that's proposed is making illegal something that was illegal. Like, to me, that's quite interesting. Except that now I can like in my case, I can be illegal from my house 150 yards to Highway 3, and then I can drive to the 2x4 and come back and only be illegal while I'm on Perry Road. It's kind of weird. So I just I'm not for or against it. I think it's going to sort itself out, but I just find it odd that we have to pass a bylaw to maintain something that was illegal. So we can pass it, and it's like it was before. So the people that want it like it was before should be happy that we pass this bylaw, because they're getting what they're asking for, except that they've got expanded privileges to drive on Highway 3 and all the regional roads, which is totally contrary to common sense. So I'm totally conflicted.
It's extremely ironic, the whole thing. It's because the people who have contacted me have said just leave it the way it is. But to leave it the way it is, we need to, you know, enact the bylaws. But it's definitely a ironic issue here. So, Councillor Cridland.
So again, through all of our discussion, the danger of doing anything right now in light of a provincial matter causes me a bit of concern too. So I agree with Councillor Gilmore. I'm planning to defeat this, hopefully, if it's up there and it's clear. That's my hope, that when we call the vote, I'm intending to defeat the bylaw. So I'll put that out there verbally so the votes go properly. Thank you for the discussion. No, I mean, this is something that's happened to us. So that's, we're going to try to do our best with this. And it's not to say that it doesn't come back. So, if Mark starts getting a whole bunch of complaints, then he'll certainly do his job and get us up a report, and we'll be here discussing the matters that are within our jurisdiction. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other, Councillor Van Vliet? Sorry?
Call the question, because I'm getting...
Sure, we're going to change it to get back in proper order. So
where we are.
I want to make sure we're clear on this. So the bylaw is attached to the memo from our bylaw officer. If you want to enact that bylaw, you'll vote in favor. If you don't want to enact that bylaw, you will defeat it. Mr. CAO.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, we're currently on item 10D2 of the agenda, which is the memorandum introducing the bylaw. The bylaw is actually listed as number 12 at the very end of the agenda. It's 12B. So if you want to defeat the bylaw, as the deputy clerk pointed out, you want to defeat the bylaw when you deal with it at item 12B. We're currently just dealing with an introductory memo. That introductory memo has been received, and that's the end of it. If you want to defeat the bylaw, when we get to the bylaws section in about 3 minutes, that's the point in time where you'll defeat the bylaw.
Okay, so then following that logic, we don't have to do anything more with this because we've already received this report. It's for information, and then we'll deal with it when we get to the bylaw itself. Okay. Moving on. Go to the 004-2021, the review of the Clean Yards Bylaw, 73-2019, and we'll look to Mr. Tardif to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to all of council. This report is in regards to direction given at the last council meeting, requesting looking into the language of keeping 2 inoperative vehicles on a property. This section was enacted when the Clean Yards Bylaw was enacted in 2019, which lessened the restrictions on residents, and that has been brought into question one time in an ongoing neighbor dispute. It was discussed that restrictions in the hamlet and Lakeshore Road and area be prohibited from having any inoperative vehicle due to property size. In this report, I do have a table of all the affected areas that would include all the hamlets, all the roads, Lakeshore Road area. And there are recommendations at the end of this report, and I look forward to council's direction moving forward on this, as well as there is one housekeeping item under the administrative penalty section for just amending section number from a 6.4 to a 6.6. Like I said, that one's just a minor housekeeping item. But if council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, the potential motion being that the bylaw enforcement staff report 004-2021 respecting a review of the Clean Yards bylaw be received, and that a housekeeping revision to the Township of Wainfleet Clean Yards bylaw number 73-2019 be presented to council for ratification. Discussion. Oh, sorry, mover and seconder on that first. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet, thank you, and discussion.
I thought Donna had her hand up.
Councillor Cridland.
No, I was just seconding it. I can move to discussion now.
Okay, any other discussion, questions, comments?
So
Okay.
Are we discussing the bylaw now or just the memo?
Well,
Through Mr. Mayor, again, the report sort of identifies the history and the background of the issue or the complaint. Again, as the bylaw officer indicated, there has been sort of one situation which has come to council's attention about sort of the inoperative vehicles that are on an abutting property in a hamlet area. And staff were tasked with providing options in dealing with that. Again, the options are leaving the bylaw as it is, which is a slightly less restrictive bylaw compared to previous bylaws that the township had, or in the alternative, tightening up the bylaw some more, where the officer has indicated that there are certain lands or areas which the bylaw could be tightened up. But again, in doing so, in recalling the original complaint, that it is more than just simply a clean yards issue. There are noise issues. There are other sort of civil matters between the property owners, and at this stage, we're hoping to get some direction from council whether or not you want the bylaw changed, or again, in keeping with staff's recommendation, it's leaving the bylaw in its current state and finding a resolve to the situation either civilly or through other bylaws that might already exist.
okay, so this is just to be clear here, because I'm a little confused as
Me too.
well. This isn't the bylaw. This is just presented to council to say that we're going to have it presented to council for ratification at a later date. Correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is saying that there are two options before council for us to come back, for staff to come back with a bylaw. One is we either amend the bylaw to make it more restrictive in urban areas or hamlet areas regarding the keeping of inoperative motor vehicles, or two, to provide a sort of housekeeping amendment to the bylaw to correct a typographical error regarding one of the sections and the administrative penalties associated with it. So basically, this report is saying to council, please provide direction to staff as to whether you want to tighten up the bylaw in hamlet areas or whether you want to leave the bylaw as it is with respect to inoperative vehicles on properties.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Okay, so I'm not in favor of tightening up the bylaws. I'm in favor of cleaning up the wording, but I don't want to impose any more restrictions on anybody.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so I'm the exact opposite. Will talks about that we have other tools to use. We haven't been able to solve anything with any of the other tools or bylaws to date. So, and just because we live in the country doesn't mean we should look like we're the Beverly Hillbillies. Clean up the place, the price of properties that they are today. I mean, every other city has this, and town. Why do we want to say, let's just put anything anywhere? It's just not right.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cridland.
This is an interesting one for sure. So again, thank you, staff, for trying to land us in the right spot. I want to go back a little bit, Mark. You've got a lot of history on this clean yards issue. This time when I read the report, what really stuck out is that pretty much everybody in the hamlets also got cars in their front yard. So if I was to make the statement that it's very universal, you used to get lots of complaints because of how the bylaw was. And of course, it's only complaint driven. So that means way more people were doing it than what was complained about, right? So now, and that was across everywhere in Wainfleet. It wasn't only outside of hamlets. So I have a sense now from this review and the background you've given us is that if we actually implement this or do the restrictions, I was never interested in the lakeshore area, but that's okay. But if we did it even in the hamlets, you're going to start getting a whole bunch more complaints again because everybody's got cars out front. Am I understanding the history correct that you've had to go through? And this has actually saved you time by having it, the way it's been for the last year.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cridlin and all of council. Yes, that is correct. I would say them at least 70% of residents in the Township of Wainfleet have an inoperative vehicle on their property. So yes, this will save a lot of time. There has been safety measures put in this bylaw that if there's any components missing, your car has to be covered with an appropriate car cover for aesthetic purposes. And a tarp is not considered a car cover. So we've taken the measures that essentially an eyesore wouldn't happen. Because if a vehicle just doesn't have plates and it's in good shape, you can't tell that it's a bad vehicle from the road. But when it starts missing fenders and hoods and items like that, we require it to be covered by a car cover, which does not look bad either. So we have taken safety measures in, but yes, this by giving this section in this bylaw, in this draft, has eased some of the complaints in the area because a lot of people do have vehicles. And this also stems even furthermore because there's a lot of people that do have race cars and a race car cannot be licensed, but it's still considered a vehicle. This could be one of their inoperative vehicles that they're allowed to keep on their property. It's bigger than just a residential hamlet issue.
No, thank you for that. Mayor, may I continue just
yes, please continue. Yes.
So again, without having cars in my front yard, it seemed reasonable to restrict this to hamlets for me. When you consider all of the province and all the other, communities out there that have it restricted already and maybe have done so forever. But, the sense of this is actually the way it is. And, the work you've done has actually made life better for most people in the hamlets, except for those that were complaining, I guess. I wish it was in the hamlets. I wish we could make that move, but I think maybe now is the time to just leave it the way it is, let it have another year. As more people move in, that will still, people that move in from elsewhere won't expect these cars in their front yard, and it'll come to its natural state, I think. So I'm prepared to just accept the way it is now with the editorial changes for now and rely on the citizens to let us know if we need to change it. Thank you for the work.
So Councillor Cridlin, you are in the options here. You're selecting option 1, maintain the current clean yards bylaw with the revision of the short-term form wording section change, which is the recommend.
Yeah, I think that's going to be fine for now. Yeah.
Okay, any other? I know Councillor McClellan's leaning in a different direction there. So.
Still leaning that way.
Still leaning that way. Councillor Van Vliet.
I'm just going to try and help him unlean a bit. So if we pass this bylaw, you wouldn't be able to have one car for sale in your front lawn if you lived in the hamlet.
If you have a car for sale, nobody's going to complain. If you have a car that's sitting there for 8 months and it's sinking in the mud, that's what I'm worried about. I don't care if a guy's got a car for 2 weeks for sale. Nobody's going to complain about that. That's common sense. But it's not common sense when you drag in 3 of them and park them on your front lawn and leave them there. All of a sudden, I decide to start collecting cars. I can put them on my front lawn and say, I'm collecting sports cars and just leave them there. That's not right.
Well, what's right for you? It could be right for someone else. We
all right, Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind my colleagues that we can't legislate common sense.
Thank you. True. Okay, so where are we going on this? I think option 1 is a potential motion here. Councillor Cridlin, you basically spoke to that. Would you like to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we go with the staff's recommendation, which is number 1, maintaining it and leaving the wording section changes.
Okay, and I think Councillor Meredith? Yeah, go ahead. No? I need a seconder for that. Councillor Van Vliet? Is there any other discussion? Okay, in favor of that motion or opposed? Councillor McClellan?
Opposed.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore?
Yeah, I'm in favor.
And I am in favor. So option 1 is carried.
Pardon me?
Okay, and now we're on to Public Works, I believe. And we'll look to Mr. Nan to speak to the electrical services, please.
Through your worship, 2 members of council, before you use a memo, I'm presenting to you with a recommendation to continuing the existing contractor for electrical service for the township. We do several contracts a year or yearly contracts for things like electrical equipment tenders or equipment rentals. Water haulage is a 3-year, but we do these several years in a row, and we do them yearly. We've reached out to our electrical contractor, and he's willing to hold the price from last year to carry it through for this year. So our recommendation is that we do not go out for additional bids, and we extend the existing contract for 1 more year.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is a memorandum from the Manager of Operations respecting the electrical services be received and supported for information. Mover seconder for that, please. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor McClellan. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Opposed or in favor? Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And that is carried. Thank you. And we're going to have a quick discussion as well on the award of tender for supply of bulk water transported. And I'll look to Mr. Nan to speak to that one again, please.
Thank you, Worship, to members of council. Staff put out a renewal tender for transport of bulk water for our cistern. We have a 10,000 gallon cistern that provides our water for all the township facilities in the downtown core area, including the library, fire halls, town hall, and public works, as well as the arena. The contract expires April 1st. We proposed a tender and we put it out for the public. We had 3 bidders submit their bids, and in front of you is the results of those bids. I did reach out to one of the bidders that seems to be very high bid to find if there's something that may have been misunderstood in the tender package, but they actually told me that is the price for the 4 truckloads of water to make up the 10,000. So the bids are as they stand, as they were submitted to the town, and they're in front of you. And the staff is recommending that we award it to the lowest bidder, Village Enterprise Water Haulage.
Okay, thank you. So the motion being that Public Staff Works Report PWSR 001-2021 respecting award of tender for supply of bulk transported water 2021 to 2023 be received, and that Council accept the bid for supply of transported bulk water for the 3-year period commencing April 2021 from Village Enterprise Water Haulage for the amount of $260 for 2021, $265 for 2022, and $270 for 2023 per 10,000 imperial gallons exclusive of tax. And that Council authorize the Manager of Operations to enter into an agreement with Village Enterprise Water Haulage for the supply of transported water. A mover and a seconder for that. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Any other discussion? Any comments? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, to Richard. Is it standard that we just do the 3 years, Richard, or do we have an option to do a longer period given the times? Like, could we do 5-year contract?
Through your worship, in discussion with some of the contractors that do this on a regular basis, they try not to go past a 3-year because they're putting a fixed price in for a 3-year period. They are taking the risk in the 2nd and 3rd year periods for additional costing or expenses that they may incur, but they've bid a fixed price for us, and they usually try not to go past a 3-year period. We could, I did not put it in this tender package. We could potentially put in, maybe after the next one, an option for an extension, put actually into the tender package. But normally they try not to go past 3 years.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none in favor or opposed, Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And I'm in favor. That is carried. Okay, and we'll move on to, I believe, the last one from our operations manager, equipment rentals 2020.
Through your worship to members of council, this report is presenting the results of the tender that we put out for bid. It was for the equipment rentals for the township to utilize by various departments. And it could be through the drainage department, it could be through the fire department, public works. All departments are capable of using these equipment rental rates. And the results that came in this year for the equipment rental rates were actually quite surprising. More than 50% have actually kept the similar pricing from last year. So we're happy to put that before council as submitted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nan. So motion being that Public Works Staff Report PWSR 002-2021 respecting equipment rental rates 2021 be received, and that equipment rental rates for 2021 be supported. Mover and a seconder for that, Councillor Gilmore and Councillor Van Vliet. And discussion? Okay, seeing none. And in favor or opposed, Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And that is carried. Moving on to review of correspondence. There's nothing noted. Does anybody have anything there they wish to lift out for discussion? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to the bylaws. Now we'll have to do these separately because obviously one there is going to require a separate vote. So we'll do the first one, the bylaw number 008-2021 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 12-2020 being a bylaw to regulate fences in the Township of Wainfleet. And look for the vote on that. I'll start with Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
I'm in favor. That is carried. We move on to bylaw number 009-2021, being a bylaw to prohibit the use of off-road vehicles on highways under the jurisdiction of the Township of Wainfleet. Everybody recalls the discussion on that. So Councillor opposed or in favor? Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet? If you oppose it, that means we're not passing the bylaw that was attached on Mark's report, which is, I think, where you were opposing that.
I'm opposed.
No, you were for it.
No, I wasn't.
Councillor Cridland?
Opposed.
You're right, defeating that bylaw. And Councillor Gilmore?
Opposed.
And I'm opposed. So that bylaw is defeated. Okay. Notices of motion. Move on to Councillor McClellan regarding short-term rentals. And there's also Councillor McClellan regarding the fill bylaw. And Councillor McLeod, I've got to be careful here for a conflict, but I'd like to just at least hear it, and we'll go from there. Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was going to also bring a notice of motion. I emailed you all quickly before the meeting.
Okay, I didn't see that. Okay. Okay, Councillor McClellan, if you would like to speak to your first motion or read your first motion.
Okay, so the first motion was on short-term rentals, but we've already had that out and staff has got it. I found out afterwards that there's already a notice of motion out there. Nothing's been done with it, so, but I'll make it a little more specific with mine. Mine is on absentee landlords that are not in the houses. They're running these as ghost hotels or whatever you want to call it. There's, you know, if I'm not after the guy that's living in the house and he rents out a room or a part of the house for a weekend or a night, that part doesn't bother me. You don't get wild parties, you don't get that. But it's when you rent a house, there's nobody there, there's nobody checking on it, the key's under the mat, come and use it. Those are the ones I'm concerned about, and that's mostly through Airbnb or that type of thing. I had somebody check, it was probably way back in November or something like that, but through different channels of social media, I think they came up with about 260 of them in our community. That's a lot of absentee places that, you know, there's no regulations on how many people are in the house. We have septic systems, so are they blowing out the septic system? Are they, you know, we have boil water advisory if they're along the lakeshore. So that's something we have to get under control. Okay, so.
Okay, thank you. So that is your motion, and you're directing staff to research that and come up with a bylaw as your request.
So that is my request, but it's been out probably since last October. I'm thinking it was Councillor Crindlin put that one in.
Okay, so do we need to still move it and second it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe that's necessary to move it and second it. I know the Manager of Protective Services will be able to speak to sort of the research and the efforts that are underway right now. And I think that based on the original notice of motion that was provided by Councillor Cridland, and this sort of added information or added focus that Councillor McClellan has just raised, those can be incorporated into the existing report that we plan on bringing back to you in the near future.
So can we put 60 days max to get back to us on this?
Through you, could Mr. Gudgeon speak to that perhaps? I believe we were looking at a time frame along those lines, but could Lee speak to that?
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McClellan and all of Council, just to provide just a little bit of status, we have certainly been working diligently behind the scenes, as the CAO suggests, researching and assembling information and reviewing alternatives in what has proven to be a very complex issue, both across the province, across the country. Yeah, as Council may be aware, this is a relatively new phenomenon as things in government go, cropping up around 2008. It's a rapidly expanding industry and creating issues in a lot of municipalities. It's been a little challenging as there's been a number of different approaches which we're kind of monitoring. Different approaches to regulation in other municipalities. And then there's the added wrinkle, if you will, of the various applicable provincial statutes, the Planning Act, the Municipal Act, and so on, that have an impact there. So that said, we are endeavoring to continue to work diligently, and we do have some working papers in play right now that are being circulated and worked on, and we were planning to get back to council before the end of May had been our sort of rough timeline. But again, we defer to council's direction, and we will continue to work diligently towards whatever timeline council deems appropriate.
Okay, thank you. And I know where Councillor McClellan is going with this. Go ahead.
So maybe we can go by the 1st of May. some of the things that I'd look at is, we know what the septic systems are rated for on each property because we did that. So that should be your number one limit of how many people are allowed in a residence. Two, they're operating as a business, commercial operation in a residential neighborhood, so if they're gonna do that, they should be paying commercial taxes, because the guy that runs the hotel down the street, we don't give him a break on his taxes or anything. So, you know, there's a whole number. The hotel has to get a fire inspection once or twice a year to know that the smoke detectors are working, the fire alarms are working, to see the carbon monoxide are working. That should be something that has to be done every couple of months when you're in a residential home. Same way, are they handicapped accessible? Because the guy that runs the hotel has to do that. So, you know, if we're gonna do this and somebody wants to go into business, we'll go into business and pay the price up front and pay the taxes. So.
Okay, thank you. So staff has direction on that from Councillor McClellan, and we'll work diligently to try to get that all done by May 1st, I think it was.
I'd ask for May the 1st.
May 1st,
At least let us know something on May the 1st.
Yeah, we could have a report back from staff, even just an update where we are by May 1st, and hopefully, I mean, the summer season is coming, so obviously we'd like to get something in place sooner if we can. Okay, so we have one more motion from Councillor McClellan, and if you'd like to read your next one regarding the clean fence, or the fill-in, sorry.
So the next one is a clean fill bylaw. There's 26 or 28 pages. Basically, I'm saying and I've called the city of Thorold and asked permission, and they said they had no problem with us copying what they have. I've emailed it to Will, just so we don't bore you all with the nitty-gritty details of fill. And then I've added a few things onto the front of it that I'm sure Will can get incorporated into it, or Lee or Richard, so that it kind of makes it Wainfleet's, and it'll address some of our problems. So I'll leave it at that, and hopefully they can get back to us with that relatively quickly.
Okay, so direction to staff on the fill bylaw there from Thorold and...
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and because it's a notice of motion, really we sort of appropriate course of action would be that council vote on giving that direction to staff, that we take the Thorold bylaw and make the necessary amendments and return that to you at the next available opportunity for consideration and adoption. Again, staff have been working on a draft fill bylaw for, I want to say, the better part of the winter. We're nearing a point where we had one nearing completion, but with the presentation of the alternative, this sort of speeds up or streamlines us getting that back to you.
Okay, thank you. So we need a mover and a seconder. Councillor McClellan has moved that. Then I look for a seconder for that. Councillor Van Vliet. Any other discussion? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I don't know if this would be a friendly amendment, Councillor McClellan, but that staff are going to bring us either one or the other, whichever they deem is going to be most suitable to Wainfleet. So if the Thorold one makes it, you know, it does the job, then great, but let staff have the discretion to bring back one as soon as we can get it. I don't know if that's friendly for you, but...
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
So in the industry, all I've heard is this one from Thorold is the toughest one around. So let's not, if they can pass it and enforce it, we should be able to do the same thing. The other ones we're looking at were from out of our area, and there's parts in it that don't deal with us.
Okay, so not a friendly amendment?
I don't want to add that to it. It's...
Councillor Cridland, would you like us to vote on that, or would you like to withdraw it, or?
Thank you. No, that's fine. I'll just withdraw it then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that direction is, where we got to vote yet, right?
Gotta vote
Mover
on.
seconder. So in favor or opposed, Councillor McClellan,
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet,
In favor?
Councillor Cridland,
In favor?
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
I'm in favor. That is carried. So staff will do that work for us. Okay, now I look to Councillor Van Vliet, who has a notice of motion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I've had the same complaint several times about parking on Tunnicliffe Road North, where the golf course is, that people are using the golf course out of season and a lot now during COVID. And I asked our bylaw officer how I get no parking signs, and he told me to bring it forward as a motion. So that's what I'm doing. So.
Okay, so that motion is to bring in no parking signs at Tunnicliffe Road
North. Right.
So that's a notice of motion. Okay, that's all we need with that. That'll be for the next council meeting. Councillor McClellan?
No, I was going to ask a question on it, but we'll leave it for the next meeting.
Yeah, okay. Good. Any other notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. We have no closed meeting, no rise in reports. So we just have the confirming bylaw. If there's nothing else. Okay, that bylaw number 10, 2021, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the actions of council held at its meeting held on the 1st, 3rd, 8th, and 9th day of March 2021 be read and passed this 9th day of March 2021. Mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor McClellan, any discussion? Okay, I see none. And Councillor McClellan, opposed or in favor?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor?
Councillor Gilmore?
Favor.
I'm in favor. That is carried. There being no further business this evening, mover and a seconder to adjourn. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor Gilmore. Any discussion? All in favor? Just put our hands up. That's carried. We are now adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.